We're at the Palestine Hotel with some jerk who we picked up on the street.
I'm still looking for my money.
He's following me around asking me for $20 since the time we've been here, so we decided to bring him along.
This is our second tour of the world, right?
This is. I love the Richard Engel tour of the hot spots of the world.
Who's your travel agent, by the way? It's Afghanistan and now Baghdad.
Kabul and Baghdad. Richard, I wanted to get you to explain where we are right now, though. I mean, Palestine Hotel is important to... It's important to Baghdad. It's important to the coverage of the war. It's important to NBC. But what we can see from right here, you can see there's a hole in the blast wall there. Can you guys see that? That there's a sort of, forgive me, artist, but sort of an ugly statue in the middle there. And then the mosque behind, which may be familiar because this is Fair Square. And what used to be where that ugly statue is right now was the famous statue of Saddam.
Exactly. This was where Baghdad was toppled. This was the end of the Saddam regime, both symbolically because of that picture, which we captured from the Palestine. That is the Palestine over there. And we were standing on a balcony in that hotel catching those shots when the U.S. Marines came in and then helped Iraqis to tear down that statue.
And this is one of those things that's become part myth, part legend, part truth about how that statue came down. I remember that morning I was working in local radio in Western Massachusetts, and I'm driving into work before dawn, and the guys who were on the even earlier morning show before me are talking about how anybody who was against the war now has to confess that the war was a great idea because the jubilant Iraqi people have pulled down the statue of Saddam in the middle of Baghdad, and clearly they're celebrating. That's the way it was initially reported. What really happened?
Well, when we go up higher, you can see the square. It's not a big square. There were just a few hundred people in the square. So it wasn't that it was a mass demonstration of millions of people coming out and celebrating. Yeah. I was here at the time, and half of Baghdad had already fallen. So the other side of the river, we're now in East Baghdad. On western Baghdad, on the opposite side of the Tigris, the U.S. military had already pulled in, occupied Saddam's palace, which is now the Green Zone.
Right, okay.
So the army...
crossing the Tigris was a big deal.
Oh, yeah. The city was... half the city had fallen.
Okay.
So the Americans had taken over, we're talking about April 8th. They've taken over half of the city, the western half of the city, which is where the airport is, and that side was done.
Right.
This side was still under government control, and there were snipers in some of these buildings. There were Fedayeen Saddam. There were militants, Arab volunteers.
The resistance was still strong.
The resistance was breaking apart now.
Okay.
I remember here some guys who were militants tried to come and surrender to me. They were like, we want to surrender. I was like, well, I have nothing to do with anything.
Yeah. Check your employee handbook at that point. What am I saying?
I was like, that's great, but there's nothing I can do for you here. I'm just, taking pictures. And so there was a lot of chaos, people literally running back and forth.
To be clear, so there is resistance, but it's breaking apart. It's hollowing out. It's
falling.
People know that the eastern part of the city is going to fall.
There were tanks on the bridges separating the east from the west. And there were A-10s in the sky, the A-10 Warthogs.
Yeah.
I was standing pretty much right here watching an A-10 firing into the city.
Wow.
And destroying vehicles right in front of me. And there were Apache helicopters also tilted nose forward, firing down, clearing a path for the advancing American column of armor. Okay. It was noisy. There were big bombs being dropped everywhere. Jets breaking the sound barrier, going very close.
And is this all the fighting happening during the day or all at night, or it's 24 hours?
24 hours.
Okay.
Day, night, and obviously I wasn't with the military. I had no kind of protection, so I was out.
You're a guest of the Palestine Hotel.
Well, not only I had lots of rooms. Okay. I kept just in the Palestine. I had 3 rooms.
Why?
And then you want to keep it vague. You don't want to,
Okay.
It's the kind of thing you don't want to know where people. I had cars, getaway cars, ready, gassed up, ready to go. I had rooms all over town. I had hired some police, and I thought if things got really bad, they'll arrest me.
They'll put you in jail.
They'll put
stow
me in jail.
You in jail, yeah.
Yeah, they'll just whisk me out. So I was worried that, you have to make your own precautions, take your own precautions.
Yeah.
So going back to the story, so half the city had fallen. The Marines were coming up this way, and I saw them coming up, and they were parked at a square called 40 Thieves Square.
Oh, we drove through that on the way here, okay.
And they were parked there, and I was here, What are they? Were they stopping?
So it's 40 Thieves Square, which has this sort of Alibaba and the 40 Thieves statue in the middle of it, and then it's sort of a straight shot to Fair Square.
Just another few hundred yards.
Yeah, easily walkable. But the Marines stopped before they got to Fair Square.
They stopped. And I was like, what are they?
Yeah, what were
What are
they
they stopping for? And some Iraqis, clearly people who didn't want the regime, and saw there were the Americans. We're like, come on, come on, just a little bit more, a little bit more. But evidently they stopped because they knew they were coming into this very symbolic place where the only few cameras that were in Baghdad were positioned.
What is the symbolic importance of this place?
Because the cameras were here.
It
had no importance.
So they knew there were journalists in the Palestine hotel.
They had just fired a tank round the day before and killed several journalists in the tank.
Why did they do that?
They say it was a mistake, that they thought there were sniper fire coming from the hotel. There were no snipers in the hotel that were firing them. As far as I could tell, I was in the hotel at the time. I didn't hear anything.
You were in the hotel when the tank round hit?
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, pieces of concrete fell down, and colleagues of mine were killed.
Yeah.
And we brought their bodies out, and it was, it was obviously a chaotic time because where do you take them?
Yeah.
The city is falling apart. There's no social services. There's still no social services, but at the time, it was a real active war zone.
Who do you call for help? Yeah, exactly.
So they stopped, and then they came in, and I think that's when a discussion was had. You know what? This is going to be an important, symbolic moment.
Yeah.
Let's gather our thoughts. They came in.
So the Marines come in.
Marines come in. A group of Iraqis sort of look at them tentatively, and then they start to go after the statue.
How did the statue's like that height though, right? It's tall.
Yeah, there was a guy with a big sledgehammer
at
who was wailing at the base of it, was wailing away, and they started yanking on it, and it wasn't going anywhere.
Right.
So then,
if I wanted to take that statue down right now with 100 of my closest friends, I wouldn't know how to do it. It's not going to happen.
Right. So they start yanking on it, and then the Americans who were there said, "All right, we'll give you a hand. You want to do this? Otherwise, you're not. This is going to take all day."
Yeah, you know what would not have made local morning radio in Western Massachusetts? A bunch of Iraqis yanked on a statue and it didn't fall down.
Exactly.
So if you want to help, you want to make the symbolic impact, you help them bring it.
Or the Americans are there and they're watching it as the Iraqis yank down a statue and it collapses on top of them and kills 10 people.
Yeah.
So the Americans helped them pull it down. There was that very awkward moment where at one stage the Americans put an American flag on it.
That's right, I remember that.
And then they
over the face of the statue.
An American flag that had a tie to 9/11. It was a flag that had been in New York.
Wow.
And then they quickly erected this statue, which is not great. And that one's damaged from from subsequent bombings.
It's amazing.
Should we go inside?
Yeah, let's go upside.
I'll show you the exact place where we had our cameras, where all of this
from which we can see that shot.
Where we can see that shot, and where you can see where all of this transpired. What's odd, and the people who were in that square at the time, I was listening to them cheer. They weren't cheering the end of America, the end of Saddam. This is freedom, freedom. They were yelling, Aish, Aish, Aish Sadr. They were cheering for Sadr. They were cheering for, not Muqtada al-Sadr.
Sadr's father.
Exactly. So they were cheering for a
They're giving a Shiite sectarian chant.
As the statue's being pulled down. That's what they were yelling in the circle.
See, that wouldn't have made local radio either.
I was reporting it all the time, but I said, look, this is just the beginning of something huge. They were not cheering, thank you, America, democracy. They were cheering for a Shiite cleric.
But in America, I mean, as Americans, we were so eager to have reflected back to us the supposed glory of the war. And I mean, the fact that it was a flag tied to 9/11 was perfect, given what the American people wanted to hear at that point. It bore no relation to reality. And just as
9/11 connection.
Just as there was no connection.
It was literally put on the statue. There was a 9/11 flag strapped across his face. To make that connection.
It's such a perfect metaphor for what was actually happening, though, that the fall of Saddam here meant something so much different than what it meant in America. And what we wanted it to mean in America, we just invented and put it on this as if it was real. And we can keep being consistently surprised that things don't work out the way they should work out in our myth.
Aish Sadr. That's what they were yelling. So they were happy that Saddam was gone.
Yeah.
But for completely different reasons.
They were happy because they were Shiites who were getting rid of the Sunni later.
And this was empowered, and the Shiite leader, Sadr, was killed by Saddam. So this was revenge.